there's a guy she can't stop thinking about, and he's probably not who you think he is. He's not the tallest one in the room. He's not the best dressed. He didn't say the most clever thing or make the funniest joke. He didn't try to impress her. He didn't do that thing where you lean in a little too much when she's talking, nodding too hard, laughing a little too fast, trying to make every single moment land. He didn't do any of that. He just showed up fully, quietly, like a man who has absolutely nowhere else he needs to be and nothing to prove to anyone in the room. And she went home thinking about him. That's what this video is about. Not tricks, not tactics, not the perfect thing to say or the perfect way to act. This is about something deeper than that. This is about the quality underneath all of it. The thing that makes a man magnetic before he opens his mouth and keeps him in her head long after he leaves the room. And once you understand what that actually is, once you really get it, not just in your head, but in your gut, everything about the way you move through the world starts to shift. So stay with me here. There's a feeling women describe when they talk about a man they're genuinely drawn to, not the guy they dated because he was persistent, not the guy they gave a chance because he checked all the boxes on paper, the one they were actually helplessly, inexplicably drawn to. And the feeling they describe almost always sounds like the same thing. He just felt different. He felt real. He felt settled, like he wasn't waiting for my reaction to decide how he felt about himself. Think about that last part, because that's everything. Most men, whether they know it or not, are running on external validation. They say something and immediately their whole nervous system is scanning for her response. Did she laugh? Did that land? Does she like me? Is this going well? And that scanning, that invisible, anxious monitoring leaks into everything. The way you talk a little faster than you normally would, the way you agree with things you don't actually agree with, the way you perform a slightly shinier version of yourself, more confident, more interesting, more put together than you actually feel in that moment. And it's subtle. She probably couldn't point to it and say, this is what I'm sensing, but she senses it like a current running underneath everything. And that current says one thing over and over without a single word: I need you to like me. And the moment she feels that, something in her relaxes, but not in the way you want. It's the kind of relaxing that happens when something is no longer a mystery, when the tension drops, not because it got good, but because it got resolved too fast in the wrong direction. When she realizes, without quite knowing, she realizes it, that this man's sense of himself depends on what she gives back. And that realization, quiet as it is the beginning of the end of attraction, because you cannot be curious about something that needs you. You can only feel responsible for it. The man she can't stop thinking about doesn't need her, not in a cold way, not in I'm emotionally unavailable and I'll never let you in way, but in a deep, settled, genuine way that says, I have a life, I have a self, I have things I care about and am moving toward, and I find you interesting, but my wholeness is not contingent on you. That quality, that deep self-containment is the rarest thing a man can bring into a room. And it is by a long distance the most attractive, because here's what that quality creates in her: curiosity, real, genuine, almost involuntary curiosity, because she's used to men who show her everything immediately, who open up the whole deck on the first conversation, lay it all out, tell her their whole story, their goals, their feelings, how much they like her already, how they've never met someone like her. And all of that, even if it's genuine, even if it comes from a real place, hits her as noise. Too much, too fast, nothing left to wonder about, and without wonder, there's no pull. But the grounded man, the settled man, the man who is genuinely comfortable in his own skin, he gives her just enough. Not because he's strategizing, not because he read somewhere that mystery is attractive, so now he's performing mystery, but because he's actually full enough in himself that he doesn't feel that desperate need to pour himself out to be received. He talks, she listens, he asks about her, she opens up, he responds genuinely from his actual perspective, and then he lets it breathe. He doesn't chase the energy, he doesn't overwater the moment, he lets it grow at its own pace. And that restraint, again, not strategic, just natural, just who he is, leaves space. And she fills that space with thoughts of him. That's how you end up in someone's head without doing anything to get there. Now, I want to talk about something that sounds simple, but cuts deep when you really sit with it. The way you treat ordinary moments is the most honest advertisement for who you actually are. Not the moments when you're on, not the moments when you're trying, the ordinary ones, the Tuesday afternoon, the slow conversation with a stranger, the way you move when there's nothing to win and nobody to impress. Women are reading those moments, always. Even before she's consciously interested, some part of her is watching how you exist when there's no pressure. And what she sees in those unguarded moments is the truth of you. So the question isn't, how do I act more attractive? The question is, who am I in the moments when I'm not trying to be anything at all? And most guys, if they're honest, don't love the answer to that question, not because there's something wrong with them, but because they've spent so much time performing, so much time presenting the optimized version, that they've lost touch with who they actually are underneath it. They don't know what they actually think about things because they've spent so long figuring out what she wants to hear. They don't know what they actually want because they've spent so long trying to want whatever makes them more appealing. And that disconnection from self, that gap between who you perform and who you are, she feels it, even if she can't name it. It feels like something's missing, like the house looks great from the outside, but when she walks in, it doesn't feel lived in. The work, the real work, is closing that gap, not by becoming more impressive, but by becoming more honest, more genuinely yourself, more willing to be seen as you actually are instead of as you wish you were. That starts with having something real going on in your life, not for show, not so you can casually mention it to her, but because a man without direction, a man whose whole gravitational center is getting this girl to like him, feels that emptiness, and so does she. Passion is visible, purpose is visible. A man who is actually building something, actually growing towards something, actually absorbed in something beyond the immediate conversation, has a weight to him, a substance. He doesn't float, he lands, and women want to stand near men who land. So whatever it is you've been putting off, whatever the thing is you keep saying you'll get serious about, whatever version of your life you keep sketching in your head but never quite committing to, that's where your attractiveness lives, not in her response to your text, in the life you're building between conversations with her, in the person you're becoming on the days she doesn't cross your mind because you're too deep in something that matters to you. She will feel that person even when she can't see him. She will feel the evidence of that person in the way you talk about your life, in the lightness in your voice, in the fact that you're genuinely okay with or without her validation. And that feeling, more than your looks, more than your words, more than any move you could ever make, is what keeps her thinking about you when the room is quiet and there's nothing left to distract her from how she actually feels. There's one more thing I want to leave you with, because I think it's the piece most guys skip over completely. Stop being afraid of her indifference. I know that sounds backwards, but the fear of her pulling away, the fear of her going cold, the fear of losing her before you even have her, that fear is what's driving every behavior that pushes her away. Every over-explained text, every little performance, every softened opinion, every moment where you chose being liked over being real, it's all coming from that fear. And she can feel the fear even when she can't see it. The man who isn't afraid of her indifference is the most magnetic man in the world. Not because he doesn't care, but because he cares about himself enough that her pulling away, while maybe disappointing, doesn't shake the foundation of who he is. He's okay either way, and being genuinely okay either way gives him a freedom in how he shows up that most men will never experience. He says what he actually thinks. He reacts how he actually feels. He doesn't perform because there's nothing to protect. His identity isn't on the line every time she looks at him, and she feels that freedom, and it pulls her like gravity, because everyone is drawn to people who are free, people who are loose and easy and genuinely unbothered, people who take up their space without apologizing for it, people who are exactly who they are and have made peace with it completely. Be that person, not for her, for you. Build that person every single day, in private, in the ordinary moments, in the choices nobody sees, and then watch what happens when she's standing next to him. Watch what happens when she goes home. Watch what happens in the quiet when there's nothing left to distract her from the fact that she can't stop thinking about the man in the room who needed absolutely nothing from her. That man is who you already are under all the noise. Get back to him.